Hello and welcome to The Hash. I'm Zack, Seward. I'm joined by Naomi, Brockwell, Ben Powers, Will Foxley, and Jen Sanasie. We got a lot to talk about today, so let's kick it to Naomi to start us off. Naomi, please.
Ooh. We're talking about the scary world of crypto scams, and they are rife in the crypto community. So the FTC put out a new consumer protection data spotlight, and there's some interesting data in here. So apparently consumers have lost $80 million to cryptocurrency scams since last October. That's not even a year. And this is a tenfold year-over-year increase, and it also only includes scams that were reported. So we can imagine that this number is actually a lot higher than what they're giving us. So the median amount of money scammed was like $1,900. That's a huge amount of money to people. There are lots of little nuggets in this, but I'm going to throw this straight off to the group so that we can unpack all of this and perhaps give some words of advice to viewers who might want to avoid these things. So I'll throw this straight to Ben.
Don't do it. No, I mean, we see scams really kind of increase in their lucrative nature, like increase with a lot of different bull runs. I mean, we saw this during the ICO boom in 2017. I think what's maybe been striking to me covering this space is, on the one hand, there are some incredibly sophisticated scams, ones that I've been looking at and I'm following, and they're like months-long endeavors of impersonating investors, like multiple shell profiles and things like that. On the other hand, that doesn't sound like what these are. These are really kind of the run-of-the-mill scams that, we see happen a lot of the time, which is more or less, send me money, you'll double your money and get it back. And then it's like, send me money. Oh, no, wait, actually, to get this money, you need to double your money and send it to me. So I think sort of the large takeaway here is this is probably kind of noobs coming into the space. And so we're seeing an increase here. I think the words of advice are just like, don't give money to people for free. That is kind of a starting point for this whole conversation. But also, there's a lot of different articles, including on CoinDesk, that outline what some of these common scams are. And again, the two I referenced are maybe the most common ones I see, even if it's coming from somebody like a celebrity, like a fake Elon account or a fake other celebrity account that doesn't make it legit. So, I think this may be complicated just with the entrance of like DeFi into this space that just increases the playing field and like complexity of what people could think they're getting involved in. But those are just a few initial thoughts on the subject. Will, what have you got?
Yeah, so we got it up right there. $2 million has been sent to fake Elon Musk accounts, which is just wild. And that's since October of this year, or of last year. That's just, it's almost unfathomable. Which is after the
Twitter hack that last summer, where this happened basically it's the same way.
It's like it's the same way. Like, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's like the modern version of the Nigerian prince scam. Like, just don't send your money to anyone.
But he needs it. No, but the Twitter way they're doing this is like they reply to bigger accounts, even CoinDesk often, and say, hey, if you send us Bitcoin, we'll send it back to you, or purchase this token or whatnot. And then your money is gone. You'll never see it again. And happens every bull run, happens during bear cycles too, but becomes very pernicious during these these bull cycles. And you also see like the rise of other scammer accounts. You see a lot of paid trading groups that are just a really efficient way of ripping you out of money monthly. That's a very common way you see people be swindled during bull markets. So yeah, as Ben said, just be careful where you're putting money.
I just want to highlight what you were saying, Will, about your YouTube comments. That's something that, like, if you're watching this on YouTube, you're watching CoinDesk's shows, people will copy CoinDesk's profile picture. They will change their name to CoinDesk. And for all intents and purposes, it looks like the official account. And they will just say, reply to us, la, la, la. This happens on my channel all the time, and people fall for it. I will constantly get pinged notifications that say, yeah, I just messaged the number you said, Naomi, really excited. And I'm like, well, no, don't ever message your number. Don't message. They do it. They're on everyone. You look on every crypto channel and you have people who are copying the profile picture, they're copying the name, and they're saying, oh, thanks for watching. By the way, I have some cool tips if you want to join this group, message this WhatsApp number. Just don't ever do that stuff. You should not be handing out your number to strangers on into that anyway. But those things are all fake. So just be really, really careful out there.
There is too, like, yeah, I mean, in general, I just want one thing and I'll throw to you, but it's like in terms of WhatsApp and stuff too, like malware and ransomware and stuff like that, malware particularly can be delivered like through WhatsApp images and stuff like that. So I've reported on a couple different cases and been looking at others where, they've used that to compromise email, to compromise 2FA, and then get access to people's wallets. So there's a lot of different ways here that this can happen. And I think, maybe reading the handle is the starting point, like on any Twitter account, but this can get quite complicated quite quickly. But Jen, what were you going to say?
Well, the age demographic was really interesting to me. I think the article said that it was people between the age of 20 and 49 that were falling for these scams. And I know here in Canada, at least, there are several scams going around right now, but you often hear about older people who are more susceptible to these scams and believing of them. So it was interesting to me to see that younger people are falling for these. And I'm just curious to hear anyone's thoughts on why. Is it just because this space feels uncharted for many people, so they just want to cash in on a quick buck?
I don't know, but until I get savagely scammed, I am not going to be sympathetic to these people. I'm just going out there and saying that. Like, there's a lot of common sense stuff that can avoid a lot of these situations. Number one, don't send money to people on the internet that you don't know. But number two, when in doubt, double check with the person that claims to be the person that's asking you to send them money. That's often something that we face in this industry a lot. There's impersonator accounts who are like, hey, DM me this. People have DM'd me and said, hey, are you trying to have me send you some money? And I'm like, no, I would never do that. What's the handle that you're looking at? Oh, yeah, that's why. So there's some common sense practices here that I would encourage people to incorporate into their online lives. And I'll just leave it there. But Naomi, I saw you had a hand up.
Yeah, well, let's wrap this up. But I think there's sage words of advice, Zach. Be really, really careful and always verify, because it actually is super easy to get scammed. Easier than you may think, Zach. So I'll push back a little on your no sympathy. But let's go to the next. Until then. So I'm going to hand it back to you, Zach. What have we got up next?
All right, so we're going to talk about this fintech app, Current. It's one of these popular fintech apps among young investors, and they announced today that they are going to be becoming more active in the Polkadot space. So for the time being, they're going to become a validator on the Polkadot network, and soon they're going to integrate a DeFi protocol based in Polkadot into their fintech app, which is really interesting to me. And it's not the first time we've seen this. But the story here, to me, is mainstream gateways to DeFi protocols. And I think it's going to get really interesting. We've seen this earlier in the year with Sam Bankman-Fried making a major investment in Maps.me, which is not a crypto app, it's a travel app. But the idea is okay, here's an app that has a large user base, and we can introduce some DeFi functionality that these users might find attractive. To me, this is what the Polkadot, this is what Current is seeking to do with its Polkadot integration. And I think it's an interesting trend that we're going to see more of going forward. I'm going to throw this to Will. Will, what's your take? I mean, this sort of fintech, DeFi, CDeFi thing. I feel like we're seeing more momentum around this as these sort of fintech apps start to discover that DeFi could offer their users some cool services.
Yeah, I think the promise of DeFi is composability, which composability is kind of a broad term for just the ability for any sort of tech stack to talk with another tech stack. And so you might have one from a bank that's really centralized and only they can control it, but you can make it talk to another tech stack that's really open and anyone can add things to it. And you can make those two work together pretty seamlessly, which has a lot of potential for kind of changing how banking works today. Banking is very centralized. If you want to go get a loan, you have to go down, talk to them, sign the paperwork, hand over a pay stub, all that good stuff. If you want to do on DeFi, a little bit simpler, you just have to have some collateral, have an address on Ethereum, which anyone can have one, and then take out a loan, use it for whatever you want. And the ability for these two tech stacks to talk to each other kind of brings a lot more potential to the table. The fact that a centralized player can come in, take a loan up on a decentralized platform and use it for their customers just kind of broadens the playing field for a lot of people who want to be banked. So this kind of pulls on a few other threads that we've been talking about on the Hash and on CoinDesk. this multi-chain future. The fact that this app has chosen to use Polkadot kind of speaks to the fact that there's composability not only across DeFi applications, but also like on the base layers. So a lot of people know Ethereum just as a buzzword nowadays. That's just another layer one, as we call it. And Polkadot is kind of a layer one. They can talk to each other in sorts. And then there's other layer ones. The more you have of these, the stronger the ecosystem gets, the more people can become banked, the more financial products they can use. They can use them on their phone. They can use them on their laptop. Doesn't matter. You can just kind of use all these financial products in a way that 15, 20 plus years ago was never even imaginable.
Yeah, I'll throw my hand up there. It's interesting if you look at Current's website. So they're all about banking technology, right? And they say on their website that they believe banking should be accessible and affordable to everyone. And you have a lot of, companies out there who are claiming this, who are, saying, oh, well, we're going to make banking more accessible. Really, it is only through DeFi that it does actually get accessible to everyone. So it is nice that they're recognizing that and saying, okay, well, we're going to incorporate these things into what we're doing. I'm actually not sure whether, certain people still be precluded because Current might have some sort of KYC thing to use them. But it really is a trend now that more and more people are getting involved with DeFi. And that's because so many people are unbanked. There are billions of unbanked people around the world. And finally, they have access to loans and credit and all these sorts of things and interest. And it's just really exciting to see so much inclusion. Jen, I'll throw to you.
Oh, I don't know if we have time for this now, but I was going to ask Zach, can you talk us through Current's kind of crypto history? It seems like they tried to kind of incorporate crypto into the app for their customers for a long time, and it didn't quite work out. So that kind of makes the story even more exciting in a way.
Yeah, for sure. So good question. My colleague Danny Nelson talked to the CTO of Current, and they definitely have been trying to do this for a while. So they've kicked the tires on a few things. 2015, I think they explored Ripple, but that functionality wasn't useful to them. I think a couple of years later, they explored Ethereum, but the fee structure on Ethereum was too difficult for them. So they're like, this is their third time. They're hoping the third time's a charm, and they're thinking that Polkadot will provide the functionality at scale that can help their users with their financial futures. I think Current is interesting. I mean, Naomi, you mentioned it. One of the things they list on their website is teen banking. There's a lot of young people who are featured on that website very prominently. So the fact that these users can interact with DeFi, like abstracted from them, right? Like we use protocols on the internet without really understanding the protocols that we're using every day when we use email or whatever. So if these sort of mainstream apps become the gateway to these underlying financial protocols, I think that's just like a really interesting evolution that we could see the space sort of beginning to take right now. I think, oh yeah, and if you want to learn more about Polkadot, Consensus is coming up next week, and they're going to be speaking with us during that event. So yeah, Polkadot. I think it's Gavin Wood is going to be there. He's an Ethereum co-founder who leads up the Polkadot project, and he's going to be speaking at Consensus in one of our foundation tracks, I believe it is. Check out events.coindesk.com to register for that thing. All right, cool. That was my best commercial. That was my best promo language. Sorry, you did a really good job. We're going to take a break. Thanks, Jen.
Great job, Zach.
Thank you. Thanks.
Jen saying that is a problem.
That's really nice. So we're going to take... Cool your jets, Will. Cool your jets. All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to be talking about a big media studio launching an NFT subsidiary, and it comes with a cartoon. Stick with us. We'll talk about it after the break. See ya.
We are witnessing the greatest paradigm shift in finance in modern history. Join thousands of newsmakers and influencers talking the future of money at Consensus by CoinDesk. A live virtual experience of leaders, changemakers, virtual reality meetups, keynotes from Ray Dalio, Gary Vaynerchuk, and much more. Get an up-close look at the boom in crypto, the surge of institutional investment in Bitcoin, NFT mania, the breakneck innovation in decentralized finance, and the coming disruption from central bank digital currencies. Join us May 24th to May 27th for Consensus by CoinDesk.
All right. So welcome back to The Hash, where we discuss the latest and greatest in crypto news. Now, this was an interesting report today from restofworld.org, which does a really good job of covering tech beyond the US and specifically beyond the US. But according to their reports and their own tests, Venmo is halting some payments that refer to Palestine within the US. Now, Venmo is obviously sort of a quick cash transfer app that is owned by PayPal. And they're currently stalling transactions for, quote, emergency Palestinian relief fund. It's a certain section of words, but often this is how kind of, sympathetic individuals in the US would pool money and then using another money transfer service, because PayPal does not operate in Palestine, nor does Venmo, they transfer it to relief funds on that side of the world. So I thought this was interesting, not only because we've talked on this show about sort of Venmo and PayPal getting into crypto. I think this really shows the limits of kind of crypto within these walled gardens and how they could potentially be limited in some ways. This has long been an issue with Venmo. I remember I had a friend who reported on this, I think it was like 5 years ago at this point, but paying his friend for a Cubano, he said like, Viva la Cuba, and then that transaction got stalled for about a year. So obviously these are sort of things that are triggered because Venmo seemingly thinks they're in violation of certain sanctions or various standards with the OFAC. And I just think it's something that we should all be thinking about when we talk about the downsides of like centralized systems, right? These aren't always hypothetical things. These aren't things that happen in the future and aren't happening right now. Like financial censorship definitely does happen. And, strings of words like this that really get halted provide a real detriment to people on the ground in these lived situations. So I thought this was an interesting story, but Jen, I'd love to get your thoughts on it as well.
You always just throw to me, Ben. Like, geez, I can feel it coming.
If somebody else wants to take it.
No, I'm going to take it. Reading this story was really sad for me. And I was thinking as I was reading it that like 2020 and 2021 really showed us why we need decentralization. And I mean, we were seeing it all over the world before, but I just really... I feel so many different ways about it, but I'm really happy that it's getting reported about in the mainstream media now, and it just made me really sad. I mean, what's happening in Palestine obviously pulls on emotional on an emotional kind of, I feel very sad now, thing for me. But yeah, just to think that this system is preventing money from getting to the people who need it is something that people should be paying attention to. But Will, I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, real quick, I have a question for Ben. So I'm wondering, from your prior reporting or just knowledge on the subject, do you think that these instances where money transfers are blocked is because of like people upstairs from PayPal pressuring them to keep in line with sanctions or policy goals, or is it typically interior within the corporation making these decisions?
Usually these are automated things. They're like certain keywords or segments of them that get scanned and then they're frozen because of that. At that point, a rep will probably come look at it and kind of you can appeal that process, or they'll reach out and say like, hey, what is this about? But what was interesting in this report also documented like, the individual whose payment was stopped said, they had to get on the, email with the rep and say like, look, I guess you think this is like about terrorism. They were trying to donate to the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund. But for some reason, they have to explain that to an intermediary before these funds can be, sort of undone. And, in this instance, the back and forth was fairly quick. As I mentioned previously, that's not always the case. And so it's just kind of an indeterminate amount of time. And I think it's worth pointing out as well that, and Lee Kuhn wrote about this in 2019 about kind of the uptake in crypto, at least in Gaza, because PayPal doesn't function there. And PayPal doesn't currently work for Palestinians in the West Bank or Gaza, but it does work for Israelis living in West Bank settlements, which are legally contentious. And so I think that's kind of like picking winners and losers and picking who has access to these systems. And particularly when we talk about like, this whole energy debate and Bitcoin or cryptocurrency more generally, it's like, this is why it matters, right? Like these are the things that we see from centralized players that make it hard for people to, get access to the financial system, but also I really think point to the fact that like it is not just criminals that use cryptocurrency. It's not just one group of people. It's people that are shut out of various trusted platforms that you and I may or have access to. But Naomi, I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point, Ben. And what you said at the start as well about like, this isn't just hypothetical. These are people actually getting shut out. People should have the ability to spend their money where they want to spend it. You saw this, when WikiLeaks, when donations were halted there, not everyone was a fan of WikiLeaks. Some people like, well, they're selling government secrets. Therefore, that's fine. And so you're going to have all of these things come up where you may or may not agree with what the government decides, but ultimately the government is deciding what you can do. It may not be illegal at all. but they can still preclude you from spending your money where you want to. And so that's why crypto is so important. It just gives people back financial sovereignty and the freedom to, promote causes that they believe in. So I just think that it's so important that people take the reins on that and, seize their monetary freedom that we now have at our fingertips. But Zack, I think I saw your hand go up as well.
Yeah, no, just this idea of neutrality, right? Good cause, bad cause, it doesn't matter, right? And I think that's the interesting conversational space that this exists in, right? When it's like, the big bad centralized boogeyman banned a payment to puppy dogs and ice cream, that's an easy conversation to have. When it's like, they banned a payment to ISIS to bomb someone, right? Like Bitcoin doesn't care. And it's a neutral platform for both of those things, and it escapes censorship and enables both those things to happen. And that's why it's a really interesting conversational space when we talk about what financial censorship means. So yeah, I'm going to toss to Jen. We're going to change gears here.
Yeah, onto a little bit of a lighter topic. Fox, the entertainment company, has announced a new animated series called Crapopolis. Now, the company says that this is going to be the first ever animated series curated entirely on a blockchain. And with this announcement, they also said that they'll be debuting an NFT company called Blockchain Creative Labs. So I'm a little confused. I'm not sure how you can launch a series curated on a blockchain. I don't know if anyone here has any insight into that before I carry on with the stories. Yes, Ben.
Yeah, I think that part's been really confusing to people. I don't think the series itself is going to be like, nice and well, on the blockchain. Like what they're doing is launching sort of a marketplace for NFTs that are going to be like connected to this show, right? Like those are two separate things. I think it's kind of unclear in the reporting, but that's the sense I've gotten looking at this. So curated on the blockchain are words that they're really hard to parse through, and it's really unclear what that actually means. But from my reading of this and a couple of other reports on this, it looks like it's just the NFT marketplace that is obviously going to be based on blockchain, not the series itself, for example.
Yeah, it's also interesting that Dan Harmon, who's co-creator of Rick and Morty, is now getting into the NFT space. In January, we saw Justin Rowland, the other co-creator of Rick and Morty, getting in on the NFT space and selling a bunch of things. I think it was on Nifty Gateway. So now both of them are kind of in the space. Is that the future of Rick and Morty? Because that's like one of my favorite shows in the world. Are we like, I mean, I may even warm to more NFT ideas if they start doing some cool stuff, because I can imagine them being like crazy creative in this space and doing some weird stuff. So I'm kind of tentatively excited about what they might come up with. I am confused as well. You made a great point, Ben. Who knows what this even means? But I'm tentatively excited.
I have a lot of different questions here. Like, I mean, I'm a little bit more cynical of this, go figure, I guess, but this is like absolutely a money grab. And I think this is absolutely the audience to do it with. Like Dan Harmon is a very popular figure. Like Rick and Morty has like absolute super fans, and these are like cultural events that people love. And these are absolutely the people that are kind of going to be buying NFTs and various memorabilia from these shows that they find, themselves really attached to and are really interesting. I had a friend actually text me this story, and he said, what does this mean? And given that Dan Harmon has kind of been a little notorious for being treating his writers poorly, treating other people on his staffs in not the best way, he's like, are they going to see any downstream royalties from like these NFTs? Because when you transfer and sell NFTs, you can set what royalties you might make off of that. So that to me was actually a really interesting question that is not at all clear from this, is like who the proceeds of these NFTs will go to, and whether it just might be Dan Harmon and Fox, or like the other people that are involved in this really collaborative process are going to be getting anything from it. Because we've seen this previously with NFTs, where one artist as part of a project says, I'm making an NFT of this, and other artists are like, what? Like, we didn't consent to this. What does this all mean? So those are the questions I think are really sort of prominent at first to me here.
Yeah, I just add to that I wouldn't, sorry, go ahead, Jen.
No, go for it.
I was just going to say, I wouldn't paint all of this is just a money grab schemes with the same brush, because if they provide something valuable that's cool, I'm a big Rick and Morty fan. Fair. They can grab my money. I am totally fine with them. If they're providing something fun and interesting,
Taylor Swift
like they can make us, Rick and Morty. They can like make as much money as they want. I think it's just if they're, I don't know, like if there are real fans who are buying this, that's kind of cool. That's more like a collectible than people who are like, oh, so and so said it's going to be great. trade. I'm going to buy in because I think someone will buy it off me, which is kind of a different world, right? And so I can understand why you're cynical about those types of things, because we've seen so much of that in
I'll say,
NFT space.
Agnostic money grab here. Maybe I'll say I'm agnostic in that regard. But yeah, I hear you there, Naomi.
And maybe it doesn't provide anything valuable. I don't even know. But Jen and Zach, you guys want to chime in?
Sure, I'll chime in.
Zach,
I was in touch with someone at Fox Entertainment this morning trying to get a couple details. Details are sparse, but an official announcement around this is coming soon, I was told. This, I guess, emerged in sort of like, I don't know what they call it, like the earnings call equivalent of like whatever Fox is going to put on TV for the next quarter or something. So this emerged yesterday. So more details to come. Very curious about, they told me it's the upfronts. Thank you. This is the upfronts. TV people are telling me it's the upfronts. So it emerged in the upfronts where like a Fox Entertainment exec sort of laid out what was what. More details to come. The thing I was curious about is like which blockchain are they going to use for this? Like, is this something that like could exist on OpenSea and Ethereum? Is this going to be something a little bit more bespoke and high throughput? I'd be very, very curious to see how they execute this, especially like the fan engagement part, right? And the sort of like there seems to be some sort of like governance ethos here. There's some sort of decision-making process that could be involved. And I guess we'll see how that plays out. But hey, Will, what do you got?
Yeah, we're going to stay in media land. So a scoop from Axios shows that Coinbase is interested in launching its own media arm. Unlike a typical newsroom, however, the person that would be reporting to the Coinbase marketing team. They're looking to hire about 30 personnel from top crypto websites, along with other traditional media sources. It kind of falls in line with a lot of other Silicon Valley firms, such as A16Z, which have hired out their own media arms to conduct their own brand of marketing. So it's kind of just following along with that typical narrative. But of course, there is a lot of crypto media out there, and there's a lot of typical mainstream media that is moving into crypto as well. So interesting to see that there's a lot more interest in crypto media right now. There's a lot of interest in getting people who know crypto and can write about it well into jobs, which is a little bit different from the typical media narrative where you see a lot of people get laid off during rough times, such as COVID. So I want to toss this right over to Zach. With your experience with ACJR, maybe you can explain that to us a little bit as well, and then talk about this Coinbase joint we got going on.
Sure, happy to. I want to ask you a question just because this will help illuminate like how it works. So you're the editorial director at Compass Mining. To whom do you report, Will?
I report to the CEO, so I do not report to the marketing.
Nice.
Well, we don't even really have a marketing team yet. But
Straight
no,
to the
it is
top.
interesting. Yeah, always to the top. You know how I roll.
Go direct.
Oh my gosh.
No, it is interesting. There's kind of a change in how media works nowadays, and maybe it'll go back to the old form, or who knows what media will look like in 10, 20 years. But you have like the traditional way of doing things where you have like an independent media organization of sorts. And then you have these new up and comers where it's a lot of times companies hiring their own media wings. And interesting to see like that. Of course, you want objectivity in any sort of reporting. That's always key to information you're putting out. And then you have questions about the objectivity when you have a newsroom that is owned by a parent organization, or you have a newsroom that is owned by itself, or there's a million different forms you can take it, or you just have like your own company just kind of putting out marketing and claiming it's news. But I want to get your take.
I guess my take is like I think this is like, so I think we've been hearing in crypto for a while, right? Like, founders like, Balaji Srinivasan have been on this, like, go direct. Hey, crypto startups, go direct. Tell your own story. You don't need a media outlet to intermediate your relationship with your clients, fans, community, right? So that I think we've heard that for a number of months. We've certainly seen from A16Z, which is a very prominent Coinbase backer, that they want to stand up their own direct-to-consumer media operation, and they are seeking to hire to do that as well. So the fact that we're seeing Coinbase follow that playbook, I think, is a little bit to be expected, right? It's in keeping with sort of this crypto ethos. It's in keeping with sort of a Silicon Valley that is presently fascinated with what they see as an anti-tech press. So the fact that they're committing resources to stand up something that gets their side of the story out there, in quotes, air quoted as much as you want, That to me makes a ton of sense, and I would expect to see more companies follow suit. Honestly, I think the downstream repercussion is kind of interesting, and like the game theory of, okay, how does traditional media respond if this thing gets legs and more companies go direct? What is the role of independent media? Does it become more adversarial? Maybe. Does it become more selective in what it picks to cover? Maybe. So I'm very curious to see how this game's out, maybe 5 years down the road when more people follow Coinbase and try to do this approach. But I'll toss this down to Naomi.
Yes, so you've had Glenn Greenwald talk a lot about this and this decentralization of media, and everyone should have their own Substack. I mean, he famously left The Intercept some months ago over a disagreement because he felt he was being censored. And so I just think that, you know, we tend to look at like, well, you have a company that is, they must be biased because they're promoting a product, and you have a news organization which must be unbiased because they're a news organization. And as someone who's been a producer at mainstream news organization, everyone has an agenda, right? And, you know, especially like where you're talking about pushback against government, which Glenn Greenwald always talks about, you know, being this fourth estate and saying, you know, if you want accountability for government, you have to be able to push back, right? And so you just don't get that when you're at these mainstream organizations, because as soon as you start to push back, you lose your White House privileges, you know, or you're just moving at such a fast pace. You get your rundown every day of the things that are being spoon-fed to you. You can cover those immediately for the day's news, or you can go and dig deep and do investigative journalism. And people like Glenn Greenwald are saying, like, we need to go back to that system. People need to go back into the deep dives. Let's get more substance there. So it's kind of interesting. You know, I'm equivocal about Coinbase's media arm because maybe it will just be a marketing thing for them. But yeah, they're controlling their own narrative, but it's not necessarily a bad thing as long as we have, you know, counterweights and other people digging into that narrative. I think that it's a positive thing for more and more decentralization in the media space. But I mean, I think Ben,
I like question whether we can even call it media or it's just like editorial content. Like those terms to me are different. Like journalism is different from content. And I think that, you know, kind of following, I'm envisioning what this would be is probably something akin to what Andreessen Horowitz has been doing with like a lot of their direct to like their audience and talking about it. And this is coming on the back end of like tech being very sort of like journalism being really optimistic and laudatory about tech in Silicon Valley. And then really, as we've seen these companies grow and the negative externalities around them grow, companies it's shifted back the other way. And now there are like critical voices and there are pushbacks. And like, you know, if you get a release or something like that, you know, like ask about like, okay, what is this? Like ask other questions. Like a question I always ask, like most of the people I talk to is like, all right, what's like the weakness in your system? Like, where is it going to break? Like tech is iterative. And so like being, you know, recognizing that is incredibly important. You know, on the flip side too, I think that it'll be interesting to see, at least for Coinbase, and Coinbase Ventures obviously is a VC firm in a lot of ways, like to see how they situate this in terms of their like apolitical quote unquote work culture. I think that's a question that is going to be continued to be struggle with, particularly as we talk about, Zack, like the neutrality of crypto sort of inherently and things like that, but exist in very political environments. And so I'm curious to see like how they report on their own products or how they report on anything without sort of mentioning whatever politics are going on around it, because I don't think you can escape that. But I also think that's a larger question that crypto is going to have to continue to grapple with.
From a use, never mind. We gotta go.
We gotta go. Remember that time? You remember that time that Airbnb launched a magazine called Pineapple? I remember that time. I don't think that pineapple lived very, very long, but it reminds me of that a little bit. All right. Anyway, we're gonna leave it there. This is the end of the hash. It's Tuesday.
Layer 2 pineapple.
Great. I'm Zack. That's Naomi. That's Ben. Jen, Will, we're the hash. We'll be back again tomorrow. Stick with us on CoinDesk TV, 3 p.m. Eastern. We got all about Bitcoin. Till then, there's a lot of good stuff to read on CoinDesk.com, so you should get to it. We'll see you soon, and thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.